Okay, so this is 10 pounds. You lost 30 of these.
Just about, yeah. Maybe 28. But I mean, you know, if we count all the times I gained a bunch of these, I lost probably more than 30.
So you weren't just one static weight and then lost weight. You've bounced up and down a bunch.
Yes, I lost a bunch of weight, and then I gained some back, and then I lost a bunch, and then I gained some back, and then I went really, really low, much lighter than I am now even. And then I was super unhappy being kind of thin and frail, and I enjoyed lifting weights and was like, I'm gonna eat everything and lift weights, and got back up to like 400 pounds, and now am 250.
Well, you look awesome, man. So I have Ethan Suplee here, who, if you don't know him already, you should. He is an awesome actor, and he's lost 300 pounds using all kinds of different diets, no one agenda, just doing it right. So we're gonna dive into the psychology of it. We're gonna dive into what the call to action was. We're just gonna have a little fun with this and see where it goes. So keep it locked in, and let's rock and roll. And this video is brought to you by Ujido Matcha. So if you're looking for a good quality matcha green tea, Ujido is where you should go. Absolutely. 180-year-old matcha company. They know how to do it. Okay, these teas are grown in Japan in the shade, baby tea leaves harvested into the finest ceremonial grade matcha that you can find. So fasting, keto, whatever dietary protocol you're doing, matcha is a great alternative and a great solution either way, just to keep yourself healthy and feeling good. So make sure you check them out down below in the description after this awesome interview with Ethan. All right, man. So what happened? When you really needed to embark on like the big journey, like what popped in your head? Like, what was the call to action?
My girlfriend at the time, it's very weird, because when I think back on my life prior to like trying to lose weight, I don't have a memory of being miserable about my weight every day. It just kind of gradually became what it was.
Yeah.
You know, like if I imagine putting on a 300-pound weight vest today, it would be miserable. My knee, I could really hurt myself. But if I put on a pound every day for 300 days, it wouldn't be as startling. Does that make sense?
No, it makes total sense.
So by the time I was that heavy, I wasn't really even aware necessarily of my daily miseries and all the effort that maintaining and building that weight required.
Yeah.
But then I got this girlfriend who I liked a lot, and I started to think about the future and our lives together, and I realized if I didn't do something, that relationship wasn't going to last, because there was a lot of active stuff she was interested in doing that I was incapable of doing.
Yeah.
And so that was really the impetus to begin losing weight. And the first diet I did that I had success on was a liquid diet, protein shakes and a ton of like fiber and supplements.
Yeah, and the point is, at the end of the day, you can skin a cat a bunch of different ways. It's like anything's going to work, especially being that overweight. And the thing that I thought about a lot, I don't know if you've thought about this much, but your image as like the severely overweight guy was kind of glorified, right? Because that was like part of, I don't want to say your brand, but that's probably why you were casted in certain things. So probably made it so that maybe you didn't feel as self-conscious about it, because there was a level of it that was kind of glorified, right?
100%. Now, I will say that like the first professional job I ever had was Boy Meets World.
Yeah.
And in between episodes, at some point, they did say to my agents, like, he doesn't have to gain weight for this. So I wasn't even aware that I was gaining weight, but I was, and the producers were aware of it, and they said something, but they didn't say I had to stop gaining weight, and they didn't say I had to lose weight. And so there was initially in the early 90s a little bit of focus on that, but then it kind of died away, and mostly I kept getting work, and it was never an issue. And dude, I played a football player at like 450 pounds.
Yeah.
I never could have played football. The real life guy I was playing was never as big as that. And so I wasn't running into issues of like, you're too overweight. It was all a benefit.
So was there ever any thought that when you started losing weight that it might jeopardize your career?
There wasn't. There was kind of thought when I was like legitimately thin.
Yeah.
There was like, oh, this is not helpful to my career.
Yeah.
But on my way there, I wasn't thinking about that.
Yeah. Interesting. So while you were going through, let's say the first, and for those that are watching, I mean, I had my own transformation too. It wasn't nearly as profound as yours. I lost about 100 pounds, but
it's amazing.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's still
It's
a challenge, right?
massive weight loss.
It was a lot of weight.
Yeah.
It was definitely, you know, for me, I was stressed out all the time. I was in a corporate kind of private equity environment and focused on money and all the wrong things. And I mean, yeah. So I mean, I can go on and on about that and bore the viewers. But I mean, when you're going through that first like 20, 30 pounds, like, this is a weird question, but like, what was going through your head? Was there anger drive? Was there? I mean, you have to really kind of get deep with it, not just like, oh yeah, I want to lose weight, but like when I look back at my focus, like it was a load of anger. Pardon my language. You know, it was a lot of anger.
Yeah, like, you know, I'm a sober guy. I can be addicted to whatever is bad for you, and so I knew through sobriety that workable steps for me were like the idea that I'm powerless.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not a powerless person, and there's certainly no powerlessness in me right now, but if I'm facing something that I don't really even know how to deal with, the idea that I'm gonna recognize my powerlessness in that instance and seek advice and help from another and kind of turn it over to them and go like, my life is unmanageable, show me the way, and I'm gonna follow it. That's really what I did initially, was go like, hey, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what to do. I have no idea where to start. Can you help me? And my girlfriend was like, yes, I can. And she'd never brought it up before. And she found this, she like did a little research and found this nutritionist doctor guy who had a liquid diet plan and said, here it is. And her kind of idea was, do this. You know, this is not something you do forever, but when you become responsible for this, you can take over and figure out doing it on your own. And, you know, it wasn't like, do this forever. This is the way to lose all the weight you need to lose, because that would take years of just drinking these protein shakes. So it was more of not anger, but more of just like releasing myself of responsibility utterly and putting myself in somebody else's hands and going like, I'm gonna just do what you say. And at some point, I'm gonna feel confident enough to kind of take over. And if I stumble, maybe I need a little help getting back on the path, which happens certainly, but it was very freeing. And I found that dealing with substances also in that way to be very freeing. Like, I tried to get sober a number of times on my own and was unsuccessful. And then the moment I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm not having success here, I'm gonna just admit that, hey, I'm admitting it to myself, I'm admitting it to another person, I'm admitting it to God, whatever version of God you want it to be. By the way, God could be an AA meeting because it's a power greater than me.
Yeah.
At the moment I did that, I kind of started to find success by just going like, I'm not doing this right. So let me get a little bit of stability by following somebody else's lead. That's not to say that I'm gonna follow their lead forever, but once I get my feet under me, I can start to look at things a little bit more analytically, a little bit more critically, with understanding, having had some accomplishment in the area.
That's deep, because I think that is a big hurdle that people deal with all the time, myself included, is no matter how humble of a person you might be on the exterior, we all want to believe that we know what's best for ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, we may admit that we don't know what's best for somebody else. You know, that's easy to do on the surface. But when it comes down to being able to admit that we may not know what's best for us, that's a whole different level, and that it's okay to resign to the fact that you might not be totally powerful. I love that you say power, because I talk a lot about mastery. There's a difference between power and mastery, and like, you know, being able to power is like I know exactly what I'm doing, I'm going to grind through it, but being able to know that you're powerless, but being able to develop mastery. And what I mean by that is just an understanding of what it is right now at this very point in time, at this nanosecond, and understanding where your place is within that nanosecond. That's mastery. And I think what you're describing is you developed that, you learned that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it can be daunting, this idea of powerlessness, and it's certainly not something that I ever consider today.
Yeah.
Like, I don't go around going like, oh, I'm powerless. I'm utterly powerful today, and I am in search of mastery and on the path towards that, and have found it in areas, I think. But initially, if I'm not having success with something, I think I got to cut it back and go, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. You know, I think it's a hard pill to swallow, but it's also kind of necessary to sometimes go like, if I'm not doing this correctly, I got to be able to admit that to myself, you know?
Totally. So you're doing the liquid diet. All right, what results did you have with the liquid diet first? If we kind of bring it back to like more tangible stuff. Okay, so you, was it 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds you lost with liquid diet before you transcended into something else? Or
80 pounds.
80 pounds.
8 of these. And I will say this, for all the weight loss and gain that I've had, that is 80 pounds that I never dipped back into.
Interesting.
Those were 80 locked in pounds. Now I proceeded to lose more weight following that. But that was like, from day one to the end of that, it was 80 pounds.
So did it just stop working at around 80 pounds, or did you just decide you needed to switch it up?
I had to go back to work, and it was a diet where I had such low energy. Like every time I stood up, I would almost black out. I mean, like literally lose my vision. My vision would go black, and I'd stand there and go like, am I gonna fall over? No. And then my vision would come back, and okay, and now I'm going about my day. Bizarrely cold all the time. So it was just not something that I could go work on and do my job as well as I needed to do. And so I then went on to a blood type diet. Do you know this diet?
For sure.
Yeah. And so, I was actually doing a movie in Romania. And so I went off to Romania and was doing this blood type diet and continued to lose weight doing that.
That's interesting. Yeah, the blood type diet, I've done some videos specifically on that, and I think it's interesting because from a physiological standpoint, like, it does make sense. Like biochemically, like, you know, we have certain antibodies in our blood, and just in case you don't know, like, I mean, blood type is just dictated by like basically antibodies. Like that's why you can't mix blood types. So from an immune system perspective, it makes perfect sense that if you're eating foods that don't align with, well, you know, you're going to have massive amounts of inflammation. So you probably had success with that just simply because, yeah, maybe your immune system wasn't as overactive and things like that. But I think mentally,
also, like, maybe, I don't know, probably that, but also just, even with 80 pounds weight loss, I'm still 470 at that point. Yeah. And just, I think any kind of
putting you in a box,
anything where I went like, I'm gonna actually consider what I'm eating and not eat whatever I want, I was gonna lose weight.
Exactly, that was exactly what I was gonna say next. It's like you were in the confines of something. You was like, you give me parameters. Yeah. And it's funny because we were talking a little bit before we were recording about just, you know, science and how it can be just so misinterpreted because that worked for you because it put you in the confines of something. People will watch this channel and they practice intermittent fasting, or maybe they do keto, or maybe they're vegan. And sometimes we all have a tendency to get a little dogmatic about that approach and what works for us. And it's okay that it works for you. It's absolutely okay that it works for you. But sometimes it's just the fact that you're resigning to something, like you said, where you can relinquish a little bit of control to something else that is going to just give you a playbook straight up. Yeah. You know, and I think, and sometimes, suffice to say, the more complicated something is, sometimes for intelligent individuals, it's better because it gets you really consciously thinking about things. Not to the point where it causes you turmoil and stress, but the blood type diet at first glance can be complicated because you're trying to almost look at an algorithm, like, for your blood type.
Right.
But for people, I think like you and I, that are probably into that, it satisfied something in our mind where we were like connecting the dots, and it's so it's really interesting. So
it was by the way, I was perfectly happy doing it. It wasn't super hard. It was like, here's a list of foods you can eat. I wasn't having to measure anything, the thing that's wonderful about being 470 and doing any diet is, like, I think any control, like the box you're talking about, you're gonna have success as long as you stick with that.
Yeah, totally. And then the cool thing about going from being massively overweight is your body is going to get very, very conditioned to utilizing stored body fat anyway. So you have a degree of what's called fat adaptation that occurs, where the cells in your body just get used to utilizing fat. When you're liberating that much fat, whether you're fasting, whether you're doing keto, whether you're just massive caloric restriction, your cells like totally switch gears. So some people find that they struggle after 100 pounds or so, but a lot of people find that they get in a deeper groove after 100 pounds or so, and some of it's psychological, but some of it really is biochemical. Did you find that it got more difficult as you went along, or did you find that it got easier?
That diet?
Well, just in general, just after, say, 100 pounds.
After 100 pounds, I had no trouble. The place that I started to have trouble was when I got down to about 300 pounds.
Got it.
And at that point, when I had the freedom to kind of, when it was still, I think at that point I was probably doing keto. By the time we got, years into the future, and I got down and I'd lost over 200 pounds at this point, 250, around that. The just giving me a list of foods that were not on the table, but total freedom on everything else, that's where it started to be like, oh, I'm not having success like I was.
Got it.
I'm also nearing, whatever goal weight is appropriate for me at that point, or would have been. I still had a fair amount of muscle mass, and that's when it started to become a struggle.
Was there something, a single food or a single group of foods that throughout the entire journey you just craved like crazy and just had to abstain from, or did you let yourself kind of give into that stuff?
There was a period of time where I'd like go to do a movie in New Zealand and suddenly be going like, I'm eating keto, but I'm gonna every now and again allow myself to have like something fried. But listen, honestly, on keto, if you just cook something in oil, that's pretty fair.
Yeah.
But I would like go, is it a gluten-free batter that it's deep fried in, you know what I mean? And so I would start to screw around a little bit there, and I wasn't tracking whether I was in ketosis, and I wasn't necessarily counting carbs accurately. It was just more this general idea, and then I started to gain weight again.
Yeah, and that's, again, like with keto, it's so easy because yes, there's a very hard line with when you're going to have results, and then that line, it's very black and white. Like if you cross over that line where you're bringing just 5 too many carbs into the diet, it's kicking you out of that state, and it kind of depletes a lot of the results that you would get. Something that comes to mind for me, like when I went through my transformation, I literally did a video on this because the things that the worst advice people gave me, or I say it with air quotes because it's not advice, it's I don't know, it's just a practically verbal vomit. Like people just say things, they feel like they're compelled to say something. Was there anything that people said while you were losing weight, advice or just comments that just drove you nuts?
I remember my wife would get very irritated over holidays where it'd be like, you're dieting over Christmas again. You're not eating mashed potatoes for the 5th year in a row. And it didn't drive me crazy. It was just, I just felt like I was disappointing people,
Interesting.
Yeah. I kind of can tune out the nonsense though. Like if you're not my wife, I don't really care what you have to say. You know what I mean? So I have a guy programming for me right now. This dude, Jared Feather, who's awesome, just because I got down to 13% body fat and it was hard. And then getting under that became really, really hard. And my instinct is always to go too deep into a deficit, and then I'm not functioning well. And so I was having trouble figuring this out. And so he's really helping me right now. So if anybody but him tried to give me advice right now, I would be like, I don't care what you're saying. Totally. Even my wife, who's like, are you really not on maintenance yet? Come back to maintenance. You're so much more fun. Like that kind of thing. I'm like, I don't care what you're saying right now. I have this for another 4 weeks and then I'm on maintenance and this is what it is. So I kind of was able to tune all that stuff out. But there's always going to be somebody who thinks they have a better plan than you're on.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and the thing that really got to me, I think the one that bothered me the most was people would always tell me, well, don't lose yourself.
Right.
Don't lose yourself along the way. Like, to hell with you. If I want to become someone better, and like who are you to tell me not to lose myself? And I started to realize that when I was in like a corporate setting, people liked to tell me that because they liked me a certain way. Yeah. Because quite frankly, I was more of a pushover in certain ways, and I was the guy that they could go out and drink with, or I was the guy that they could go out and go to dinner with, or they were going to lose that person that probably subconsciously made them feel a little bit better about themselves. Yeah. And it was like this just verbal diarrhea that would come out that didn't really mean anything, but it was just don't lose yourself. Like I've heard that probably 5 or 6 separate times, and it just would. Yeah, I mean, knowing what I know now, I don't give 2 cares what people say. Yeah. But when you're going through a transformation and you're kind of in a vulnerable state, those things do resonate with you, and those words just stick so much.
Yeah, thankfully, listen, I don't believe any of us are islands. I believe we all require other people in our lives, and we all benefit from other people, whether it's, the gal who's handing you your coffee at Starbucks, or somebody you're talking to every day about your workout, or whatever it is, or even the connection with the people we're going to make right now. I think these are really important. That said, for me, going back 20 years, the only person that ever mattered was my wife. Yeah. And, to some degree also my kids, but my kids, what are my kids going to tell me? Would matter to me if I was doing something that was really bothering them, and they say like, hey, I'm really sick of the amount of olive oil you're putting on our vegetables. And I go like, okay, I will stop doing that. I'm going to serve you broccoli with no olive oil from here on out. You want butter, you can have butter, or whatever it is. But like, I think to what you're talking about, it would only ever be my wife. Like if my wife, and she has done this many times, but also my wife is capable of allowing me to be who I am and who I'm figuring out. I went through a cycling phase where I just rode my bike every day. Yeah. I finished doing My Name is Earl. I thought, oh, we're rich. I could basically retire right now. I gained weight during My Name is Earl. How am I going to lose this weight? I like riding bikes. I started on a beach cruiser and ultimately was on road bikes and even track bikes on the velodrome, just riding in circles for hours and hours and hours. And my wife was okay with that. And there were times where I would wear my little cycling cap to lunch with her, and she would be like, take that effing hat off. You moron, you're not on a bicycle and you're embarrassing me. And I would be like, why? It's cool, I'm a cyclist now, this whole thing. And she would be like, if you want to shave your legs, you have to wear long pants. It's fine when you're on the bike, but I don't want to see it, off of the bicycle, like this kind of thing. So that mattered to me. But if somebody else told me to take my hat off, I'd be like, go to hell. I don't care what you have to say,
Totally. It's same thing with my wife. Like I've been with my wife since she was 14, I was 16. Like we've been together since high school. I've never been with another woman. Like it's plain and simple. Yeah. I value what she says. She's the only person that can get under my skin, and she's the only person that's allowed to get under my skin. And it's so funny because like she'll let me do anything. same kind of thing. Like, she was with me when I was a 140-pound cross-country runner in high school. She was with me when I was a, D-bag 300-pound corporate junkie. She was there through the transformation. She was there when I wanted to be a fitness model, which was just a terrible time in my life. And then she's here with me now. And she'd always said, she's like, as long as you don't be a D, I don't care what you do.
Yeah.
And it sounds so simple and colloquial, but it's so true. And the same thing applies like with my kids. I realize like what I have to do to be the best version of myself when I'm with my family kind of doesn't matter, as long as when I am with them, I am that best version of myself. So if that means that I need to go ride my bike around a track for 7 hours and it makes me a better person when I come home, she's all good with it.
I'm so with you. There would be also, I would allow her the right to say, like, you're doing this too much.
Yeah.
We need a little bit more time with you, or you're always exhausted when you get home.
Yeah.
And that's not fair to us. And so it was stuff like that. And then eventually she was like, hey, buddy, I don't know if you know this, but you're not rich. You need to go get a job, and you can't ride your bike 40 hours a week, And then I had to sit and go, oh, okay, yeah, this makes sense. It took her a couple of years to say that, but she did finally say it, and that was her right to do. I cannot imagine not having her, how much more complicated what I've done would have been.
Yeah.
It just, I had a teammate the whole time who was utterly my cheerleader, who demanded support herself, and I was her team member too, but like, I didn't have anybody in my way. And I think it is more than likely that a lot of people will have somebody standing in their way, or a group of people standing in their way. And that's just another, almost insurmountable task you have to take on. I think it's important to recognize that when it happens, and figure out what your priority is going to have to be.
Exactly. It comes back to just like the fundamentals. When you look at priorities, it's something that's again so simple but so commonly overlooked. Like if you create a simple triangle, a pyramid on a whiteboard, and you just align like what is the most important to you and what makes up the bulk of your time, and it's so easy to identify. And sometimes those priorities are just completely misaligned, where if your priority is sincerely getting healthier, then it's your job to align those in your life with that priority. And if you're good at what you do and you're good at communicating, you can get people in line. Of course, there's going to be some people that it just purely doesn't work, and that's a different story for a different day, I suppose. But it's being able to effectively communicate with a spouse about what you're doing is everything.
Yeah.
Because it's like, my wife saw me go through transformation, but she saw me become a very vanity-driven person in a fitness modeling career, and which I've always been fairly introspective and analytical, but surrounded by a world where there's half-naked women and half-naked men that are just trying to flaunt themselves, essentially, that can be very, very, very troubling for anybody that's a spouse, right? Like, oh, well, how do they feel sufficient? So how you approach any kind of change is very, very important. And when you're going to be my wife, I had to explain to her, okay, I'm going to be losing weight. I'm losing weight. This is what we're going through together. And there's going to be times where it's going to be difficult. And there's going to be times when you're going to feel insecure, and I need you to be transparent about that so that we can fix it, so it doesn't manifest into this anger that ends up being an obstacle for me.
Yeah. It's a lot to. There's listen. It can be as simple as like, I want to lose weight. I'm going to figure out how to do that. But there's a lot of ancillary paths that you got to take into consideration, and relationships are a big part of that, and how you're going to start existing. If you are accustomed to eating out at restaurants every night, and maybe that's not a good idea when you begin a diet, you might alter a bunch of these relationships that are based on eating out every night.
Yeah.
It's just a lot to think about.
That's interesting. Yeah. It's like, what is your baseline? Like, what are you basing a relationship off of? And like, is it truly a valuable relationship internally, or is it based off, that's such another simple thing. It's like, if you're accustomed to eating out every night, then you're setting sort of a happiness baseline on that too. So if that becomes removed from the equation, then it feels like there's this huge void in your relationship, when in fact it was a material, superficial thing. Going out to eat shouldn't be the fundamentals of your relationship. It should be a lot deeper than that.
Yeah.
I want to jump over and talk a little bit like about your workouts and things like that now, because
Sure.
you went through a cycling phase where you got really, really skinny, or you lost a lot of weight that way. Then, I mean, you're pretty jacked now. Like, you're not just lean, like you built some serious muscle. Like, what are you doing now?
So from cycling, when I brought my bike to visit a buddy in Australia, and I was riding my bike around Australia, and he said, they've got this cool, this was 2011 or 12. And he said, they've got these cool gyms here that you've never seen anything like it before. It's not like a normal gym. Come check out this gym. And I go to this gym with him, and it's the first time I've seen anything like CrossFit. This was prior to CrossFit being a big thing here. And my buddy goes like, there's this rowing machine that my trainer gets me on every day. You got to try it because you ride bikes. I bet you'd be really good at it. And I get on this rowing machine, and I'm getting pulls on it that are beating like the record for the gym. And we're talking about like gnarly jacked Australian dudes who, fight great white sharks in the ocean every day.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Like gnarly dudes. And they're like astonished at what I can do on this rowing machine. And so just that was like, oh, I'm good at this. I'm going to try doing this. And so when my wife was telling me like I needed to figure out exercise that wasn't taking 8 hours, I bought a rowing machine and started doing that every day. I wound up doing full marathons on a rowing machine, 49,000 meters in 3 hours. Like, that was kind of became my workout. And then I was also looking for a little bit of community, because on the bicycle, I would have a group of dudes I would go and ride with, and sitting in my gym at my house on my rowing machine got kind of lonely. And so I then found CrossFit. Well, where can you go and row next to somebody? You go to CrossFit. And I started doing that, and I found, I really like lifting weights. So I was doing CrossFit for a minute, and then I hurt myself, and I was done with CrossFit and had to recover. But when I was done recovering, I was just like looking at good form for Olympic lifts instead of doing Olympic lifts for time, actually doing them properly. And then I just started enjoying lifting weights. At some point in there, I was being told by work, like, you're too thin.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, I like lifting weights. I'm just going to lift weights and eat whatever I want. Yeah. So for like 4 years, I ate whatever I wanted and lifted weights. I wasn't lifting smart. I would just go into the gym and fill up a bar and lift it a bunch of times until I couldn't lift it anymore, and then go do something else. There was no plan. And I got up to nearly 400 pounds again. But all that time, over those years, I was also building muscle. And then 2017, I went on another diet. I went back to keto and lost a ton of weight.
Yeah. So what are you doing now? I mean, obviously things are wonky right now. So I mean, it might be a little bit distorted, but if everything was perfect right now, what kind of?
The last year and a half has been really interesting. So when I went back on keto, it was basically just cut carbs out and eat whatever you want. Yeah. And I lost a bunch of weight doing that. And then I stopped losing weight. And so I had to go like, okay, it's not quite that simple. So I'm gonna switch over to like clean keto, as I called it. And so it became like a little bit of broccoli and a bunch of chicken thighs and olive oil. And and then I started losing weight again. And then my weight loss slowed down again. And so then I was like, well, I'm just gonna eat less. And so I'd eat less and my weight loss would start up again. I'd lose weight. And at some point, I was not liking the visual results. Yeah. And I also was having trouble in the gym, and I was hungry all the time. And I was going like, I don't know what's happening here, but I'm either starving myself on keto or not starving myself and not losing weight. And then when I'm starving myself, I'm getting smaller, but I want to see my muscles. Started doing DEXA scans, saw that on this starvation keto clean, thing that I was doing, where I was just not thinking about it, but going into way deep of deficit and losing muscle mass also. And so I then started doing some looking at like, what can I eat? I had this idea that I was allergic to carbohydrates. I don't know why. I just really, from years of believing like, no, the only way I am capable of losing weight is keto. Found out that wasn't true. It's certainly an easy thing, and for my lifestyle, when I'm traveling, like if I cut carbs out, I don't have to think about anything, and so it's like a very easy diet to be on. Once I'm getting down into lower body fat percentages, I had to start doing like some calculations, and so I basically just went on a standard diet, which was top loaded with protein, and then carbs, and then a little bit of fat. Gained weight for the first 3 days, though I was in a deficit, not understanding that it was just glycogen. I had I wasn't like, and I was like freaking out, but I made it through those days, started losing weight, read more, read about the principles of progressive overload, started doing that. And on my own, I got down to 13% body fat. So I had like some visible abs and was finally getting muscles and was like really stoked on how I looked. And basically I'm still doing that. I'm getting a little bit of help right now with finely tuning the diet, because my instinct is just like, I can go into a deep caloric deficit, no problem. But I know that then when I come out of it, I'm gonna put weight back on. And so I'm just trying to really ease this last, literally, this is what I've got left, to get to like 8% body fat on a DEXA scan. That's it. It seems like actually a lot.
Well, I think as someone that was super overweight, kind of like we touched on before, it's like the level of fat adaptation. I'll get kind of scientific for a second. Like inside your cell, you've got your mitochondria, which is going to take the fat and it's going to metabolize it into what's called acetyl coenzyme A and ultimately create energy. And when you're super overweight, you're so fat adapted that when you go keto, you start to get some initial results, but unless you are bringing your calories significantly lower, your body is so efficient at using fat that it almost becomes a problem. Like it is so efficient that your body knows how to create energy with less amounts of fat. Whereas you take someone that's never done keto before and all of a sudden you put them on keto, it takes a little bit of time for the body to adapt, then all of a sudden it's like jet fuel. But with anything, your body's trying to find efficiency, and that's exactly what happened. And it happens to a lot of people. It's exactly why, people give me crap all the time because I don't stay on keto 100% of the time. Well, no, because of just that. I cycle in and out of it because it allows me a chance to, your mitochondria like to use whatever fuel is the predominant fuel source. So if you are accustomed to eating a lot of carbs, your body's going to get efficient at using those. Same with fats. So seesaw it back and forth every now and then, just find a scale and a time frame that works for you. And that's probably what happened. That's why you could go so long. That's why you could go into such a deficit too, is the more fat adapted you are, the more accustomed your body is to just not eating. It's fine. Like it's people that do a lot of fasting. They experience the same thing. Like it's just like, well, I just don't have a desire to eat. Like it's fine. And so it makes it so easy just because the hormones are telling you that you're not hungry, and just because your fat signals or your cells are signaling to your brain that you're not hungry, doesn't mean that you're not in a deficit. Like you can still be like a deficit independently of what your brain is telling you. And it's a problem that I have too, and that's exactly how injuries happen. That's how, I find myself, if I start fasting too much, like lo and behold, I end up with soft tissue damage. I end up with issues because, well, I'm in a deficit, even though I don't feel like it. Well, I'm not hungry. What the heck? I'm still going to go bench 315 for reps and see how, you can still be strong. There's only so much like central nervous system energy that can get you there before your soft tissue goes, So it's interesting. It's interesting to hear that, from someone that's lost that much weight, that, yes, you're still going to have these hurdles, these constant plateaus.
And like I said, man, I can lose weight. Like losing weight is really not hard. I can be in a deficit, and I can be in a blinding deficit truly, to where I'm standing up and almost blacking out. And I will, if I go like, I'm gonna do this for 40 days, I'm gonna do it for 40 days. The problem is coming out of it and the long-term results, and actually trying to figure out, like, you know, you hear a lot about lifestyle, and it's like, that's important, you know what I mean? Like, because losing weight isn't the forever goal. Like, whatever that is, that's the temporary goal. For me, the thing I've found that I concentrate on more than anything is maintenance. And like, it's something to work through, because I always want to see a lower number on a scale. That is the Pavlovian motivator for me. If I get on a scale, I want to see it down. By the way, right now I know I only want to see it down like 1 pound a week right now, and that is really fragile, but I want to see it lower by like 5 pounds, you know what I mean? So I'm fighting these irrationalities in my head, and so going through a period where it's like, I don't want to see it down. I might want to see it a pound up, and then a pound down, and then a pound up, you know, because it's going to fluctuate a little bit, but I don't want to see this trending downward cycle. Maintenance has become the thing I've learned the most on, where I'm looking at a meal and going, this meal is designed to be 1/6 exactly of what fuel I need for the day. It's composed correctly. Now I'm going to eat this, and I'm going to recognize how I feel eating this, because I've destroyed all those signals in myself.
Yeah, exactly, man. Exactly. I'm in the same boat. The signals, and I say this so much, is that like with cheat meals and I'm not even a fan of having them scheduled, because if anyone's like lost weight and they know the emotional relationship with food, for one, like having stuff scheduled like that can give you this false validation and this false, and also, I mean, if you struggle with addiction, then it can also, you're creating an impulse, kind of, not even an impulse, but you're creating something where a reward system based upon food, which is a habit loop that can form very fast, because it's dopamine.
And then you're just getting to that point every week, or whatever it is, bi-weekly or bi-monthly or whatever. The whole thing. I went through that too, where it's like, I'm white knuckling the week to get to Saturday or Sunday for my cheat day. You know, I read Tim Ferriss's book, so there was a period of time where it was like, no, you get a whole cheat day, no problem. He didn't understand. I'm eating 30,000 calories in a cheat day.
He's never been extremely overweight. So, yeah, and it's like you struggle through this week to get to this one reward. You build this habit that's your reward, and that's what you want. And like the advice I usually give, I'm not going to give you advice because I heard what you said about advice, but this is reinforcing it for me, is like, when I have a cheat meal, a lot of times I wake up that morning and decide I'm going to have a cheat meal that day.
Right.
It's impromptu. It's because like, retrospectively, I feel like I earned it. I feel like I did good. I feel like I could use it. But also, the most important thing is, just like you said, is not necessarily the warped signals that are in your body, but the direct data-driven response. My workouts are getting weaker. I feel like something's happening. I feel like I need some extra calories. I feel it, and I listen to my body, and I try not to have a warped perception in my mind that is dictated upon I should have a cheat meal.
Right.
It's flat out like, I woke up this morning, I felt a little weak in the gym. There's something going on. Yeah, Amber, let's go get tacos tonight.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like planned out, you know.
Yeah.
So
it's wild. You know, I thought going into eating carbs that it was going to be this thing, you know, like I wouldn't drink a near beer, honestly, because I don't want to want to have a real beer, you know what I mean? And when I started eating carbs, I was scared that it was going to be this trigger, and now I'm just going to be incapable of stopping. But the reality is, like, carbs without fat are boring.
Yeah.
I actually think fat is much more fun. Like, I would take a big fatty steak over a bowl of rice with no butter or oil or sauce. Like, the steak, no question, tastes better, it feels better, I get this satiation more from it, the satiety of a giant steak with crispy, glistening fat like that I love, you know what I mean? But I'm with you. I don't actually have cheat meals very often, and when I do, I just try to make sure that it's not gonna derail the day or the week or whatever it is. If I'm gonna go eat cheeseburgers, fine, but I'm gonna figure out that could be half my calories for the day, and then I'm just gonna adjust that way. So it's not on my program, but it's also not gonna really affect the day that much.
No, I'm totally with you on that. So what's next for you?
I'm going to get to 8% body fat. And by the way, this is an entirely vain goal. Like,
that's okay.
It's not something that I even feel a little bit small right now. And I'm like, yeah, this is not the weight I'm going to hang out at. But I'm going to get there in the next 4 or 5 weeks. I'm going to do a nice long maintenance period over the holidays, and then I'm going to do a massing phase early next year, and it's going to be the first time that I try to put on muscle that's not reckless, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's not just like eating pizzas and lifting weights. It's going to be like thought through, where my calories are increased by 15 or 20%.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. I'm excited to see that, man. Well,
me too.
I know there's probably a lot of people that are just would like to hear more on this, and it's obviously just, I love being able to just drill a little bit deeper in just the base, instead of just the calories in, calories out, simple conversation, like what's driving the actual change. So, but where can people find you? Where can everybody find you?
Ethan Suplee on Instagram and Twitter, but Twitter it's just whatever I post on Instagram, and American Glutton Podcast.
All right, cool, man.
Yeah.
All right, well, awesome, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Let's do a round 2. Like, let's keep doing this stuff.
Yeah, totally. I'd like to dive in more into just different pieces of it. Like, we had some really deep conversation about, a little bit of quantum physics rabbit hole and kind of just science and the state of science and where everything's at right now. And I feel like having more conversations about that. And also, I'll be launching another channel come January that's geared a lot more towards just being self-made and your garage gym and workout, and just a whole different vibe from what we have here. So that'll be a perfect opportunity to do some more work with you too.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Keep it locked in, and I'll see you tomorrow.